Porcupine Mountain's Wilderness State Park looms over Michigan's Upper Peninsula like a forgotten god, its ancient forests sprawling across 60,000 acres of untamed earth. Towering hemlocks and white pines, some older than the nation itself, knit a canopy so dense it swallows the sun, leaving the ground below in perpetual twilight. In the spring of 2016, Elias Crowley, a freelance cartographer with a hunger for solitude, stepped into this shadowed kingdom to map its hidden trails. He sought the quiet of the wild, a respite from a world too loud with human noise. Instead, he unearthed a secret that clawed its way into his nightmares. A cave brimming with human bones, sealed away by authorities under a flimsy veil of safety concerns. This is no campfire tale to shrug off with a laugh. It's a descent into the marrow of the wilderness, where the air hums with menace, and the past gnaws at the present like a beast that never sleeps. Welcome to the forbidden excavation of Michigan's darkest enigma. The trek begins into the silent wild. Elias Crowley was 32 that year, a lean figure with sharp eyes and a restless spirit, the kind of man who felt more at home with a map in hand than a roof overhead. He'd built a life charting the uncharted, remote trails, forgotten ridges, places where the earth still held sway over concrete and steel. The Porcupine Mountains, known to locals as the Porkies, called to him with their promise of isolation. In April 2016, he took a contract from a hiking app developer to map a network of unmarked paths snaking through the park's deepest reaches. It was a job tailor-made for him. Days alone with his thoughts, nights under a sky unspoiled by city glow, and a paycheck to keep his truck running. He packed light but smart. A GPS unit, paper maps folded into a waterproof sleeve, a compass dangling from his belt, a small pack with food and water, and a phone he knew was useless out here, its signal choked by the forest's embrace. The night before his descent into horror, Elias pitched his tent miles from the park's bustling trails, a solitary speck in a sea of green. The forest sang its usual nocturne, leaves rustling like whispers, an owl's mournful call threading through the dark, the faint skitter of unseen creatures. He slept soundly, lulled by the rhythm of the wild, his breath fogging in the crisp air. Morning broke gray and heavy, the sky a slate of clouds pressing down on the treetops. He broke camp with practiced efficiency, stowing his gear and setting off deeper into the Porkies. The trail he followed was a ghost of itself, barely a path, more a suggestion of passage where the underbrush thinned and the earth bore faint scars of footsteps long faded. Hemlocks loomed overhead, their needle-laden branches knitting a roof that filtered the light into a dim greenish haze. The air carried the rich, loamy scent of damp soil and pine resin, a perfume Elias savored as he walked, his boots sinking into the soft ground with each step. By mid-morning, the forest's mood began to shift, though he couldn't pinpoint why. The chatter of birds, jays and chickadees that had flitted through the canopy, dwindled to a murmur, then ceased entirely. The rustle of squirrels, the drone of insects, even the wind's gentle sigh through the branches, all fell silent. It was a stillness so profound it felt like a weight, a presence pressing against his eardrums. Elias paused, tilting his head to listen, but heard only the thud of his own pulse. He shrugged it off, chalking it up to the whims of nature. The wild had its moods, after all, and he'd walked through stranger silences before. Then he found the clearing. It emerged from the trees like a wound in the forest's flesh, a near-perfect circle, perhaps 30 feet across, its ground stripped bare of life. No grass, no weeds, just packed dirt, smooth and unnatural. In its center stood a pile of rocks, stacked with a precision that spoke of human hands, yet carried an aura of something older, something deliberate. Elias had seen cairns before, crude markers left by hikers to guide the way, but this one was different. It didn't beckon, it repelled. The stones, weathered and moss-streaked, seemed to lean inward, as if guarding a secret they'd rather keep buried. "Weird," he muttered, fishing his phone from his pocket. He snapped a photo, the click of the shutter loud in the hush, and scribbled the coordinates in his notebook: 46.8112 degrees north, 89.6145 degrees west. A chill prickled his spine, but he brushed it aside. He wasn't superstitious, he told himself. The woods were littered with oddities. Abandoned lawn chairs rusting in clearings, makeshift altars of twigs and feathers left by eccentrics or pranksters. This was just another curiosity, a footnote in his day. Yet as he turned to leave, the silence deepened, and the air grew heavier, thick with an unnameable tension. He glanced back at the cairn, half expecting it to shift, to reveal some hidden watcher. It didn't, of course, but the feeling lingered, a splinter under his skin, as he pressed on into the trees. The first sign of dread, a forest unraveling. An hour later, the deer stopped him cold. At first, he mistook it for a fallen log. Its bulk sprawled across the path like a casualty of last winter's storms. But as he drew closer, the illusion shattered. It was a carcass, a buck, its antlers still velvet, its body gutted in a way that turned his stomach. The entrails fanned out in a grotesque spiral, glistening wetly in the dim light, and the wounds were jagged, torn rather than cut, as if something had ripped into it with reckless fury. The neck twisted at an impossible angle, nearly backward, and its back legs, they were gone. Not gnawed or scavenged, but torn away, the stumps ragged and blood-crusted. The stench hit him like a wave, raw, metallic, tinged with rot, and he yanked his shirt over his nose, gagging against the fabric. "What the hell did this?" he whispered, crouching beside the ruin. He ran through the possibilities. A bear, perhaps. Black bears roamed the Porkies, though they rarely ventured this deep. Wolves, maybe a pack driven by hunger. But the injuries didn't match. Predators kill to eat. They don't mutilate for sport. This was different, a tableau of violence that felt almost performative, as if the act itself had been the point. Elias stood, scanning the trees, their trunks rising like bars in a cage. The silence pressed harder now, a physical thing, and the hairs on his neck prickled as if brushed by unseen eyes. That's when he heard it. A low, scraping sound, like claws dragging across bark. It came from deeper in the woods, faint but deliberate. A slow, rhythmic rasp that set his teeth on edge. He froze, eyes darting through the shadows, but saw nothing. No glint of fur, no flicker of movement. The forest held its breath, and so did he. "Just the wind," he muttered, though the air was still, the branches unmoving. He waited, straining to hear it again, but the sound didn't return. Not yet. He pushed forward, unease coiling tighter with each step. The signs multiplied. Deep scratches marred tree trunks, grooves etched 10 feet high, too wide and vicious for any bear he knew. Patches of underbrush lay flattened, the ground beneath them compacted as if something massive had passed through, leaving no tracks, only absence. The air grew colder, though the sun still hung above the horizon, and sweat soaked his shirt despite the chill. His mind churned, rationalizing each anomaly. A storm-felled branch, a trick of the light, but the explanations rang hollow. By mid-afternoon, his usual bravado frayed, and he found himself talking aloud to fill the void. "Come on, Crowley," he said, voice cracking. "You've seen enough bad horror movies to know this is how people get killed. Don't trip over your own feet now." The forest didn't laugh. It didn't answer at all. And then came the scream. It wasn't human, not entirely, nor was it animal. It was a sharp, guttural howl, raw with rage and something deeper, something that twisted his gut into knots. It sliced through the stillness from somewhere to his left, echoing off the cliffs that loomed in the distance. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to put as much ground between himself and that sound as possible. But curiosity, damnable, reckless curiosity, clamped its jaws around him and pulled him toward it. "Stupid," he muttered, gripping his pack tighter. "Just a quick look. See if someone needs help." He turned off the trail, the trees thickening around him, their branches clawing at his arms as he moved. The canopy choked out the light, plunging him into a perpetual dusk where shadows danced at the edges of his vision. The second body, a glimpse of doom. 10 minutes felt like an eternity, each step sinking him deeper into the forest's maw. The air grew dank, heavy with the scent of moss and decay, and the silence returned, thicker than before. Then he saw it. A man, or what was left of him, slumped against a gnarled oak. The torso was shredded, ribs jutting like broken teeth from a chest cavity torn open by something merciless. Blood pooled around the roots, dark and sticky, soaking into the earth like an offering. The face, though, was intact, frozen in a mask of sheer terror, eyes wide and unseeing, mouth agape in a scream that never found voice. Elias stumbled closer, his breath shallow, and pressed 2 fingers to the man's neck. No pulse. The skin was cold, clammy, dead for hours, maybe a day. His clothes hung in tatters, a logo on his jacket catching Elias's eye. A local hiking group, the Upper Peninsula Trailblazers. This wasn't some lost tourist bumbling into trouble. He knew these woods, knew their rhythms, and still something had found him. Elias stepped back, his mind racing. A bear wouldn't do this, not with such precision, such savagery. Wolves didn't leave their kills posed like trophies. He scanned the scene, noting the scattered pack a few feet away, its contents strewn across the ground. Maps, a water bottle, a flashlight smashed beyond use. The man's hands were empty, no weapon, no defense. Whatever had done this hadn't given him a chance. The scraping sound returned, louder, closer. Claws on bark, a slow, deliberate drag that seemed to circle him. Elias bolted upright, his breath catching as the trees leaned in, their shadows stretching like fingers. His heart hammered, a frantic drumbeat against his ribs. Fight or flight kicked in, and flight won. He ran, branches lashing his face, his chest heaving as he retraced his steps toward the trail. The forest blurred around him, green and gray and black, a tunnel of terror closing in. Then he saw it. Bursting through the trees to his right was a shape that defied every law of nature he knew. It moved on all 4s, its body massive yet gaunt, the size of a grizzly but leaner, hungrier. A frame stretched thin over bones that seemed too long, too twisted. Its limbs bent at impossible angles, joints creaking like rusted hinges, and its skin, or was it fur, was mottled, patchy with scars and burns, clinging to a form that mocked anatomy. The head was the worst. A wolf's snout, elongated and grotesque, bristling with jagged teeth that spilled from its maw like shards of glass. Its eyes glinted, cold and predatory, locking onto him with an intelligence that made his blood freeze. It stopped, head snapping toward him, and for a moment, they stood there, man and monstrosity, locked in a silent tableau. Elias felt the weight of its gaze, a primal awareness sizing him up, deciding his worth. Then it charged. The chase, a dance with death. He ran. There was no fighting it. Not with the small utility knife clipped to his belt, not with anything he carried. The creature was fast, faster than its bulk suggested, crashing through the underbrush with a relentless rhythm that shook the ground. Elias veered off the trail, desperation driving him into the dense thickets, hoping the trees would slow it. But it gained ground, its breath a wet, rasping snarl behind him, close enough to feel the heat of it on his neck. He tripped over a root, sprawling into the dirt, his pack slipping from his shoulder, gear scattering like leaves in a storm. Scrambling up, he grabbed a thick branch, pathetic, splintered, barely a weapon. But it was something, a frail shield against the inevitable. The creature emerged from the shadows, its movements jerky, marionette-like, as if controlled by an unseen puppeteer who'd forgotten the strings. It didn't charge this time. It stalked, slow and deliberate, its head swaying side to side, savoring the hunt. Its claws clicked against the earth, each step a promise of violence. "Come on, you ugly bastard," Elias whispered, gripping the branch until his knuckles whitened. "Let's get this over with." It lunged. He swung, the wood cracking against its face with a dull thud. The impact barely fazed it. A twitch of the head, a flicker of annoyance in those glinting eyes. A massive claw swiped, catching his chest and hurling him back against a tree. Pain exploded, white-hot and searing, blood seeping through his shirt in warm, sticky rivulets. It snapped its jaws inches from his face, teeth glinting in the dim light, and he kicked out, his boot slamming its snout. It snarled, a sound half roar, half scream, a cacophony of rage, and recoiled just enough for him to act. He grabbed a rock, jagged and heavy, and smashed it against its head. The creature staggered, shaking its skull as if to clear a fog, and Elias seized the moment. He snatched his pack and ran. The forest became a blur. Trees whipping past, shadows clawing at his heels, the pounding of his own heart drowning out the world. He splashed through a stream, the icy water soaking his legs to the thighs, praying it would mask his scent. His chest burned with every breath, the gash across it throbbing in time with his pulse. But he didn't stop. Finally, he stumbled behind a boulder, its bulk a cold, unyielding shield. He collapsed there, lungs heaving, legs trembling like jelly. Minutes stretched into hours, or so it felt, his ears straining for the creature's pursuit. It didn't come. The forest was quiet again, but not peaceful. It was the silence of a predator waiting, biding its time. He stayed there, hidden, until the adrenaline ebbed and the pain took over. Blood crusted his shirt, his hands shook, and his mind raced with questions he couldn't answer. What was that thing? A bear gone mad? A wolf twisted by disease? No, it was something else. Something that shouldn't exist. Something that wore the skin of an animal but moved with a purpose too human, too cruel. He waited, watching the shadows, until the first hints of dusk painted the sky. Then, slowly, he rose and limped back toward civilization, the forest watching him go. The cave, a tomb of secrets. Elias emerged from the Porkies a ghost of himself, bloodied, wild-eyed, his voice hoarse as he babbled about a monster in the woods. He found a ranger station near Lake of the Clouds, collapsing into a chair as he spilled his story to a pair of park officials. They listened, their faces masks of polite skepticism, nodding as they scribbled notes on yellow legal pads. Probably a bear, one said, his tone flat, rehearsed. They can get aggressive this time of year. Elias shook his head, insistent, but their eyes told him they'd already dismissed him as a man unhinged by exhaustion or trauma. He didn't blame them. If he hadn't seen it himself, felt its claws, heard its snarl, he wouldn't believe it either. A week later, a news report flickered across local stations, a brief blip amid the weather and sports. Hikers had stumbled onto a cave deep in the Porcupine Mountains, its entrance half hidden by a tangle of roots and vines. Inside, the floor was a graveyard, dozens of bones scattered across the dirt, some animal, others unmistakably human. Skulls stared sightlessly from the shadows, femurs lay like kindling, rib cages gleamed white in flashlight beams. The hikers fled, reporting it to the authorities, who descended on the site with grim efficiency. By the next day, it was sealed off, orange cones and caution tape strung across the entrance. The official line citing structural instability and safety concerns. No further details emerged, no count of the bones, no speculation on their age or origin. The story died as quickly as it began, buried beneath the mundane hum of daily life. Elias saw the report on a grainy TV in a bar outside Ontonagon, nursing a beer he barely tasted. The cave's coordinates weren't given, but he knew in his gut. It was near where he'd run, where the creature had hunted him. He thought of the cairn, the deer, the man against the tree, and a cold certainty settled over him. Those bones weren't random. They were a ledger, a tally of the lost, and the thing he'd seen was their keeper. He never returned to the Porkies, though the cave haunts him still. Late at night, when sleep eludes him, he sees it. The dark mouth of that cavern, the bones glinting within, and the shadow of something moving just out of sight. The cover-up unravels, echoes across the wild. The Porcupine Mountains aren't an anomaly. They're a thread in a tapestry of terror stretching across North America's wildernesses, stitched with stories too similar to dismiss. In Minnesota's Boundary Waters canoe area, Alden Merritt watched a gaunt, canine horror tear his friend apart in 2016, its elongated limbs slicing through water and flesh with equal ease. The campsite was trashed, the canoe shredded, and the official report blamed a bear, though the tracks, deep and bipedal, told a different tale. In Montana's Absaroka-Beartooth Wilderness, Tobias Crane, a backcountry ranger in 2009, fired on a creature with too many teeth and claws like scythes as it butchered 2 hikers. He found a ravine littered with bones, human and animal, before the area was cordoned off, the deaths pinned on a rogue predator. In Texas, Elijah Caraway saw it in 1997 near Bandera, crouched over a rancher's corpse under a windmill's shadow, its patchy fur dripping with blood. The tracks vanished into the hills, and the sheriff called it a cougar attack, though no cougar stands 7 feet tall. These aren't isolated incidents. They're fragments of a pattern. Caves of bones, mutilated remains, creatures that defy biology, and a silence from those in charge that speaks louder than words. In Indiana's Charles C. Dean Wilderness, a surveyor in 2013 found a deer shredded with surgical precision and glimpsed a thing with a wolf's snout and human hands. The man he found dead was gone when rangers returned. The site quietly closed. In Arizona's Sierra Ancha, Gordon Huxley fled a campsite in 1997 after firing on a clawed monstrosity, only to learn of hikers found mauled nearby, their deaths hushed up as an unknown predator. Each time, the story ends the same. Evidence buried, witnesses ignored, areas sealed. What's the truth? The bones in that Michigan cave weren't a fluke. They're a testament to something ancient, something that stalked these wild places since before we laid claim to them. The authorities' silence isn't incompetence. It's dread. They've found these sites before. Piles of remains in hidden grottos, campsites torn to ribbons, tracks that don't belong to any known beast, and each time, they erase them. Why? Because the alternative shatters our illusion of control. We tell ourselves we're the apex, that the wild bends to our will. But out there, in the deep woods and shadowed canyons, something else reigns. It's not a bear or a wolf or a myth. It's real and it's hungry. Dig deeper, and the whispers grow louder. Native tales, Ojibwe legends of the Wendigo, Apache stories of skinwalkers, speak of beings born of greed or curse, spirits twisted into flesh that hunts between worlds. Old logging records from the Porky's mention workers vanishing in the 1800s, their camps found bloodied and abandoned. A trapper's journal from 1923, unearthed in a Minnesota archive, describes a thing with a dog's face and a man's hands dragging off his partner near the Boundary Waters. He burned his cabin and fled. These aren't coincidences. They're echoes, reverberating through time, warning us to stay out. Yet we don't listen. Hikers still vanish. 2 in the Porkies in 2017. Their tent shredded, no bodies found. A family of 3 in the Absaroka-Beartooth in 2020. Their campfire cold, their gear scattered like confetti. The reports call them accidents, lost to exposure or wildlife. But the claw marks, the silence, the bones, they tell a different story. And the caves? They're out there, hidden behind official tape and lies, waiting for the next fool to stumble in. Here's where you step into the frame, reader, listener. Picture yourself as Elias, standing at that cave's mouth, the air thick with the stench of rot and the weight of unseen eyes. Would you cross the threshold, flashlight trembling, to peel back the shadows and see what's been buried? Or would you turn away, letting the wild keep its secrets, pretending the world is still safe? And if you heard that scream, that guttural, inhuman wail, drifting from the trees on a moonless night, would you run toward it, driven by some primal need to know, or flee, praying it never finds you? Your choice might reveal more about your soul than you're ready to face. The Porcupine Mountains endure, their trails open to the brave, the reckless, the naive. The cave's exact location is lost to bureaucratic fog, its coordinates scrubbed from public record, but the bones remain, a silent chorus of the devoured. Whatever Elias saw, it wasn't alone. It's out there, in the Porkies, the Boundary Waters, the Absaroka-Beartooth, and beyond, watching, waiting, its claws scraping the earth in a rhythm older than us. The next time you wander too deep into the wild, listen closely. You might hear it too. A rustle too heavy, a breath too wet, a scream that isn't yours. And when you do, ask yourself, how far will you dig before the truth digs back?